You get everything you said you wanted: the job, the relationship, the apartment with good light in the mornings. And you're sitting on the couch on a random Tuesday, nothing wrong, no crisis, no bad news, and there's this strange, hollow quiet in your chest that you can't explain to anyone without sounding ungrateful. You tell yourself to stop being dramatic. Things are fine, better than fine, actually. So why does fine feel like standing in a room with all the furniture removed? There's a name for this gap, and it's not depression, and it's not ingratitude, and it's not a personality flaw. It's something your brain does by design, and once you see the mechanism, this feeling stops being confusing and starts being almost predictable. Let's start with the part nobody warns you about. The brain doesn't respond to how good your life is. It responds to change. Picture a thermostat. It doesn't care if the room is 70 degrees. It cares whether the temperature just moved. A thermostat set to 70 will trigger the exact same alarm whether the room drops from 90 or rises from 50, because its entire job is detecting change, not measuring comfort. Your emotional system runs on something disturbingly similar. It was built to notice movement, a promotion, a breakup, a win, a loss, and then, almost immediately, reset the baseline back to neutral so it can detect the next change. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it's one of the most quietly brutal features of being human, because it means the good things you fought so hard for get treated, chemically, the exact same way as everything else you've already gotten used to. Which is to say, eventually invisible. That job you dreamed about for years? Your brain didn't sign a contract to keep celebrating it. It congratulated you for a while, and then it moved on, the same way it moves on from a new pair of shoes, or a nicer phone, or the first week in a new apartment when the light through the window still felt like a small miracle. But adaptation is only half the story. There's a second, sharper reason the emptiness shows up specifically when things are going well, and this one is less about biology and more about attention. When your life is difficult, your mind has a job: solve this, survive that, get through today. Struggle gives the brain an assignment, and an assignment, however painful, comes with structure. But when the struggle disappears, when you finally have the job, the partner, the stability, that structure disappears with it, and what's left is silence. Not sadness exactly, just unoccupied space. And most people have never been taught what to do with unoccupied space, because for years, their entire identity was built around handling emergencies, not sitting in the absence of them. This is why so many people describe the strange irony of finally hitting a goal and feeling less, not more. It's not that success is empty, it's that success removes the noise that was quietly organizing your attention, and what's underneath the noise was never actually addressed, it was just outrun. Here's an example. Someone spends years chasing a promotion, working late, proving themselves, telling themselves, once I get there, I'll finally feel secure. They get it. Corner office, better title, higher number in the bank account. And 3 weeks later, they're sitting at their new desk, staring at the same laptop, feeling the exact same low hum of not enough. Except now there's no external goal left to blame it on. The chase was never just about the promotion. The chase was something to point the emptiness at, so it had somewhere to go. Once the chase ends, the emptiness doesn't leave, it just loses its cover story. This connects to something psychologists have studied for decades: the difference between wanting and liking. These sound like the same thing, but they run on almost entirely separate systems in the brain. Wanting is the engine that drags you toward a goal, dopamine firing in anticipation, that electric little pull of almost there. Liking is the actual experience of enjoying the thing once you have it. Here's the unsettling part. The wanting system is far more powerful, far more persistent, and far less connected to actual enjoyment than most people assume. You can want something intensely and barely like it at all once it arrives, which explains why the anticipation of a trip is sometimes more alive than the trip itself, why the days before a first date can feel more vivid than the relationship 6 months in, why chasing the goal felt more like living than actually reaching it did. This isn't a design flaw, it's the whole engine of how the species survived. A brain that never fully rests in satisfaction, so it keeps searching, building, striving, reproducing, surviving. It was never built to let you sit still in enough, which means the emptiness you feel when life is objectively good isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that the ancient wiring you inherited was never calibrated for satisfaction in the first place. It was calibrated for pursuit. Now here's where it gets more personal, because there's a third layer under all of this, and it's the one that stings the most. Sometimes the emptiness isn't about adaptation, and it isn't about losing your sense of struggle. Sometimes it's about discovering that the goal you built your identity around wasn't actually yours. It belonged to someone else's voice in your head. A parent who valued achievement, a culture that measured worth in job titles, a version of success you absorbed so early you never once questioned whether it was actually what you wanted, or just what you were taught to want. When you finally reach a goal like that, there's no genuine reward waiting at the finish line, because the finish line was never really about you. It's like spending years training for a marathon someone else signed you up for. You cross the finish line, and everyone's cheering, and you're standing there confused because your body did the work, but your heart was never actually in the race. This is often what people mean, without quite knowing how to say it, when they describe success feeling hollow. It's not that the achievement was fake, it's that the why underneath it was borrowed. And borrowed reasons don't generate real satisfaction, no matter how impressive the achievement looks from the outside. There's one more piece, and it's the quietest one. Easy to miss because it doesn't announce itself the way heartbreak or failure does. Emptiness, unlike sadness, doesn't come with an obvious cause. Sadness points at something, a loss, an insult, a wound. Emptiness just sits there, formless, which makes it almost impossible to explain to other people, and even harder to explain to yourself. You can't point at a single event and say, "This did it," which is exactly why it gets dismissed, minimized, mistaken for ingratitude. But the absence of an obvious cause doesn't mean there's no cause. It usually means the cause is structural rather than situational, not something that happened to you, but something about how your entire pursuit-reward system is built. So what actually shifts this? Not much research suggests that chasing a bigger goal fixes it. Bigger houses, bigger promotions, they run into the exact same adaptation wall, just at a higher altitude. What tends to shift it is smaller and stranger than people expect. Attention trained on the present rather than the next milestone. Not as a wellness slogan, but as a literal redirection of a brain that's been aimed exclusively at next for so long it forgot now was ever an option. People who deliberately practice noticing what's already in front of them, really noticing, not performing gratitude for an audience, just actually registering the warmth of the coffee, the specific sound of a particular laugh, tend to report the hollowness softening, not because their circumstances changed, but because they finally gave their attention somewhere to land besides the horizon. Which means the fix was never getting more. It was learning to actually be where you already are, in a mind that was built, from the very beginning, to always be looking past it. If you've ever sat in the middle of a good life and felt strangely far away from it, that isn't proof something is broken in you. It's proof you're running very old software in a very modern life it was never quite designed for. What's one thing in your life right now that you used to want desperately, and now barely notice at all? If this put language to something you've felt but never explained, subscribe. This is exactly the kind of thing this channel exists to name.